Society will take all forces of production and means of commerce, as well as the exchange and distribution of products, out of the hands of private capitalists, and will manage them in accordance with a plan based on the availability of resources and the needs of the whole society. In this way, most important of all, the evil consequences which are now associated with the conduct of big industry will be abolished. There will be no more crises. The expanded production, which for the present order of society is overproduction, and hence a prevailing cause of misery, will then be insufficient and in need of being expanded much further. Instead of generating misery, overproduction will reach beyond the elementary requirements of society to assure the satisfaction of the needs of all. It will create new needs, and at the same time, the means of satisfying them. It will become the condition of and the stimulus to new progress, which will no longer throw the whole social order into confusion, as progress has always done in the past. Big industry, freed from the pressure of private property, will undergo such an expansion that what we now see will seem as petty in comparison as manufacture seems when we put aside the big industry of our own day. This development of industry will make available to society a sufficient mass of products to satisfy the needs of everyone. The same will be true of agriculture, which also suffers from the pressure of private property and is held back by the division of privately owned land into small parcels. Here, existing improvements and scientific procedures will be put into practice with a resulting leap forward, which will assure to society all the products it needs. In this way, such an abundance of goods will be able to satisfy the needs of all its members. The division of society into different, mutually hostile classes will then become unnecessary. Indeed, it will be not only unnecessary, but intolerable in the new social order. The existence of classes originating in the division of labor, and the division of labor, as it has been known up to the present, will completely disappear, for mechanical and chemical processes are not enough to bring industrial and agricultural production up to the level we have described. The capacities of the men who make use of these processes must undergo a corresponding development. Just as the peasants and manufacturing workers of the last century changed their whole way of life and became quite different people when they were drawn into big industry, in the same way communal control over production by society as a whole and the resulting new development will both require an entirely different kind of human material. People will no longer be, as they are today, subordinated to a single branch of production bound to it, exploited by it. They will no longer develop one of their faculties at the expense of all others. They will no longer know only one branch, or one branch of a single branch, or production as a whole. Even industry, as it is today, is finding such people less and less useful. Industry controlled by society as a whole and operated according to a plan presupposes well-rounded human beings, their faculties developed in balanced fashion, able to see the system of production in its entirety. The form of the division of labor which makes one a peasant, another a cobbler, a third a factory worker, a fourth a stock market operator, has already been undermined by machinery and will completely disappear. Education will enable young people quickly to familiarize themselves with the whole system of production and to pass from one branch of production to another in response to the needs of society or their own inclinations. It will therefore free them from the one-sided character which the present-day division of labor impresses upon every individual. Communist society will, in this way, make it possible for its members to put their comprehensively developed faculties to full use. But when this happens, classes will necessarily disappear. It follows that society organized on a communist basis is incompatible with the existence of classes on the one hand, and that the very building of such a society provides the means of abolishing class differences on the other. A corollary of this that the difference between city and country is destined to disappear, that the management of agriculture and industry by the same people rather than by two different classes of people is, if only for purely material reasons, a necessary condition of a communist association, the dispersal of the agricultural population and the land alongside the crowding of the industrial population in the great cities is a condition which corresponds to an undeveloped state of both agriculture and industry and could already be felt as an obstacle to further development. The general cooperation of all members of society for the purpose of planned exploitation of the forces of production, the expansion of production to the point where it will satisfy the needs of all, the abolition of a situation in which the needs of some are satisfied at the expense of the needs of others, the complete liquidation of classes and their conflicts, the rounded development of the capacities of all members of society through the elimination of the present division of labor, through industrial education, through engaging in varying activities, through the participation by all in the enjoyments produced by all, through the combination of city and country. These are the main consequences of the abolition of private property. Well, Section 20 just drops the bombshell right away. It makes it explicitly clear what the universality of the abolishment, a dialectically negative supersession to remind you, people, of private property, along with the capitalist social order, entails. It will instill a planned economy that is based on the uppercase S science, Wissenschaft, that all dialecticians follow, and no more of the chaos of production that predominated and reproduced capitalism's existence. And to state the obvious, the class character of the forces of production, along with the gradual but needed expansion, will be showcased in the medium of socialism that helps establish the communist project. Again, the line of each according to their need, to each according to their ability, is a universal phrasing of the socialist and later communist-based. The latter being the full expression of such, and the former trying to establish such, so the communist base can be the full expression of such. And of course, this leads to talks of overproduction in the following subsection, which nowadays is called post-scarcity, as its modern signifier of the same signified message, producing a lot, in the most simplest term that one could give to both overproduction and post-scarcity alike. But, in the capitalist space, overproduction has the class character of only yielding the inevitable economic crisis that plagues all capitalist countries and has been found to be the one of the main root sources of all economic crisis. In fact, whether they directly or indirectly link to the source of the economic crisis matters not, as long as the event comes about, which it certainly does under capitalist countries, when capitalists try to either squeeze out as much super profits as they can, or new inventions in the means of production allows them to create more for less, which in any case doesn't bear to be the reality of overproduction in socialist bases. And the base, once more, for the readers and listeners' sake only, is the economic side of the social order, and that of society in its entirety. Yet, why doesn't it bear itself to be a plague in socialist economies, that being overproduction? If one has been paying attention to the droppings of class character, not only in this video, but of other videos beforehand, one can already know the answer, but not the words to describe such. So, let me describe such. which Engels made clear enough in the beginning and the ending of this section. Overproduction in a socialist base only serves to expand the existing base while meeting the requirements of society to sustain itself in its current level. Overproduction becomes much like surplus value in a capitalist country, yet it doesn't get robbed of the working peoples to only benefit a small section of society's greed, but for the entire masses per se under a socialist base and, more generally, a communist social order. Ultimately, like the surplus value for capitalists, overproduction will result only to be spent by society as to expand itself outwards and reinforce what it has already. In this act of spending, they save themselves from bloating themselves while not letting anything go to waste, which is not true of capitalist societies, which they only allow the overproduced goods to rot to the wayside, which neither benefits the capitalists per se, with the mere exception of the extraction of surplus value, and doesn't benefit the markets, for which they cannot truly continue on their operations with this overproduced and overstocked goods, and neither for the quote-unquote consumer, for they cannot really acquire enough of the universal commodity, that being money, to buy such overproduction and overstocked goods. Truly, the socialist base as seen under Stalin's USSR and Mao's PRC truly grew and shown to the world that one doesn't need capitalism to exist to truly prosper, regardless of the petite bourgeois that lived in both. However, since both lived under these systems, they were subordinated by the masses regardless, whether it be the instrumentality of the party that both the USSR and PRC used, or being subordinated into only working with the proletariat and can never band together with other petite bourgeoisie. But let us move on. Indeed, both industry and agriculture will be free to have their booms, but will always be guided under a plan that fits in accordance to the material conditions of an area. In such case, the division of labor, along with the class system, will have to weather away under a socialist medium, and ultimately a socialist social order, which will ultimately be symbolized under a communist social order, for which the class system does not exist. Yet it is within this very socialist medium, the most antagonizing period of class conflict, that the proletariat has now a means to exercise the bourgeoisie out of existence, while, in this double movement, taking control of what the bourgeoisie used to own, that being all the means of production, reconfiguring the relations of production, expanding the forces of production in order to benefit themselves, and becoming the very ruling class they have overthrown. Yet, once inserting themselves as a ruling class over themselves, while being the ones that are working in the same moment, they abolish the class system, and ultimately both the ruling class and the working class into a non-class, an undifferentiated class that both exists but yet does not exist in the sense of the differentiation of ruling class and working class and all the subclasses that fall under such. Likened to private property being abolished into common property which is a non-property, for which is undifferentiated between all the true owners of such, for everyone owns such, but it is through a collective bond, but yet all has access to it, all can modify the property, and all can work on the property, but yet not one truly owns it and can dictate the usage, the works, and the modifications of such property. It is through this collective bond that they all can equally, but must agree upon, all the modifications on such property. And in this dialectical movement, the development of humanity will course through this medium, the socialist medium, many a times, till the end of history has come about, and any development after that will only be a dialectically positive supersession of what has already existed, and will only reaffirm and reproduce them under new conditions that support such. And yet, the socialist medium, that being the socialist social order, will wither away and will abolish itself into a non-medium when all class conflict has eventually died out. As such, the ideal of the Renaissance man will come alive under the socialist social order and will be only exemplified under the communist social order, since the base will desire what it has not, that being that it lacks the multifaceted people that can truly work under every branch and can do every job that it requires to be done. Yet, since it cannot truly be mastered, it will always leave the lack unfillable. But because socialist orders practice towards such, and tries to attain such, in their practicing towards such, they'll always find the pleasure in partially fulfilling the desire and reap the benefits of such. In any case, since the socialist base presupposes multifaceted people, as shown by the history of the USSR and the PRC, it will have to guarantee a system of education that promotes this quality of a working person, which will only aid the socialist social order's practice towards attaining the desire. In this way, it continually reinforces the abolishment of class society while unifying the classes under one class that will eventually become a non-class, once it overthrows and assumes its position on an ambiguity of ruling and working class at the same time. Truly, the communist project is the one to abolish the present conditions while respecting the material conditions as a means, that of which must also change as the things that it connects with each other changes to achieve the abolishment. It would transform the relations between the sexes into a purely private matter which concerns only the persons involved and into which society has no occasion to intervene. It can do this since it does away with private property and educates children on a communal basis, and in this way removes the two bases of traditional marriage, the dependence rooted in private property of the man on the woman and of the children on the parents. And here is the answer to the outcry of the highly moral Philistines against the community of women. Community of women is a condition which belongs entirely to bourgeois society and which today finds its complete expression in prostitution. But prostitution is based on private property and falls with it. Thus, communist society, instead of introducing community of women, in fact, abolishes it. For the communist project, the family, that being the bourgeois conception of such, is abolished into a communal Brimian not. The biological family isn't abolished under a communist social order per se, since it doesn't threaten nor deny the emergence of and continual reproduction of the communist superstructure. However, truly the aspect of the family that exists under the bourgeois superstructure will be changed when patriarchy, the name of the father that traps discursive knowledge in every social fabric under the capitalist social order, will be mercilessly rooted out under the transition from capitalist society to communist society under a socialist medium. Ultimately, any byproduct of the capitalist social order relationship to the female sex must be abolished and gotten rid of, since it will most likely not support the communist social order, that being the inequality between the sexes and everything that goes along with such. The nationalities of the peoples associating themselves in accordance with the principle of community will be compelled to mingle with each other as a result of this association, and thereby to dissolve themselves, just as the various estate and class distinctions must disappear through the abolition of their basis, private property. Truly, this section can be read like the others, with the abolishment of the name of the father and the division of labor. That much can be said to be true for the superstructure that allowed these cultures to exist in the class character that it did exist under. As such, these will be abolished, and the cultures will be proletarianized, which will ultimately act as the medium to allow other cultures from far stretches of the earth to intermingle and unite, and ultimately allow the abolishment to happen. As such, as all of this is happening, it will ultimately make the workers of the world truly unite. Yet equally in a double movement, the communist respects culture and knows that they themselves cannot abolish culture in one fell swoop, which ambiguously equally means that, while capitalism has yet to be abolished ultimately all communist revolutionaries are anti-imperialists and seek to it that no culture will be gutted by imperialists for the sake of either capitalism truly trying to expand itself into other markets, and as a byproduct getting out the superstructure in the area, and the second perception of accelerationism that is promoted by accelerationists and quote-unquote right Marxists. For while nothing is natural in the sense that they are truly affected to themselves and can exist in a void, that means not that we must allow imperialism to run rampant and tear countries and cultures apart, where often the goal of imperialism is to support capitalism for the new national bourgeoisie at home, and build a comprador class that betrays both the national bourgeoisie and the proletariat and peasantry while being terrorized by imperialism per se. All religions so far have been the expression of historical stages of development of individual peoples or groups of peoples, but communism is the stage of historical development which makes all existing religions superfluous and brings about their disappearance. For the communist project, and ultimately the communist social order, we are all atheists. Atheists in what sense? Atheists that we do not care for the existence of God, that being the uppercase G God, which goes beyond the Abrahamic, Eastern, and non-Abrahamic, non-Eastern lowercase g gods. If one or a multiplicity of lowercase g gods exists, then we'll gladly shake their hands and move on, assuming that they had no malintention. And if none of these lowercase g gods exist, we still move on and care no bit of their non-existence. And ultimately, an uppercase G God is much akin to Hegel's absolute, or Hegel's reason, or Hegel's conception of law. Thusly, the Communist project ultimately foresees religion being abolished, likened to culture and class society, and will equally respect such, only in the sense of culture being equally respected as such, but not class society being treated with such respect, and will make sure that it will be proletarianized before ultimately being abolished like culture and like class society. Truly, state atheism, likened to the USSR's and PRC's state atheism, showcased the tolerance of all the religions under their grasp that only the enlightened liberals dared to desire, while also making it actual and practical